Hello, welcome to episode 20 of my journey starting and building my own native AI search platform. Today's episode, we're going to talk about, let's see, how I'm using coding LLMs to really build this enormous platform in some ways as a one-person company with no funding and just working from my home. And I'm able to do it largely because of some of the coding LLMs that are available. And so I've talked a lot about in the past how I use them. Today's session I'm going to talk about multitasking. So there are some things that make things tricky when you want to multitask. And what I mean by multitask is have multiple coding sessions in parallel. For someone like me, one, you have to be on the same branch of coding, and so it's easy for the files to conflict if you're working on features or coding um, um, that involve the same source code or the same file. So you want to avoid that. Second is it's just mental overload because you want to keep a close eye. I've mentioned this in the past that I review every single output, these things output, the LLMs output, even their thinking, what they've done. I review the diff. And so that puts a lot of mental burden. If you have two, that already is a lot. And if you have three, which is what I'm going to show today, it really, really kind of pushes someone like me. And I believe it's not so much about speed and coding a lot, because code is now free, cheap, maybe, because these LLMs can spit out like no tomorrow. So it's really how you architect, and that's the big skill I think folks will need. If you want to build something that I'm doing, you have to be great at architecture. And thankfully, I was architect in the past, and I love architecture. Basically, what I mean by architect is ability to be at a higher level, and then zoom in when needed, and then zoom back up, so that you can have and develop a little bit of trust with the coding LLMs, so that you can go and build these things and then dive in and zoom in and change code, write code only when it's needed. And you focus on reviewing, and your brain is focused on how you want to build it, what's the vision, what's the product, what's the vision, why, and how you want to architect it, how the data flows. Like in something like a search platform, how do you process the query? What about localization? How do you understand the query? What's APIs or service providers I'll call, what pages I'll crawl and scrape, how do I produce the response intelligently, and what if the response is not good quality, what do I do next? There are a few things that are involved. So in today's session here, I have 3 different sessions that I'm working on. So this is one where this is my search, building the search core pipeline. Right now I'm working on localization and trying to understand the locale as well as the language the query is coming from, also where the user is based, and try to personalize. So a big part of my product is personalization. It's something what I call known. We want to know the user, but in a non-creepy way, transparent way. So that's what this is going on. Then I have a second session right here where this is about entity enrichment. So the idea is that I extract entities from the query as well as from the response, and then enrich. This is a pipeline just to kind of enrich entities. So have a deep understanding of entities is basically is a knowledge graph feature. Build your own little knowledge graph. I used to work for Google, and I was part of the knowledge graph team at Google in a leadership role capacity. And knowledge graph can serve as the source of truth and a source of data to ground your LLM responses. And I'm building a little knowledge graph of my own. There aren't many knowledge graph implementations out there that have the kind of latency requirement as well as the recency, the freshness requirement that I need. Google has it, but it's very bare bones. And this gives you a lot of power. So here I'm working on a pipeline that can fetch entity, store it, enrich it, all that jazz. So this is a second kind of different kind of source code that this work stream is touching. So there is no overlap. with my search pipeline, query processing pipeline, which is currently focused on localization and basically building a little knowledge graph. And the third coding session I have here is on just CI, GitHub, continuous integration, and guards and pre-hooks and all of that, and just making sure everything's green. So this is obviously more to do with just infrastructure and kind of making sure I have the right set of GitHub CI action set up, so if something blows up, I'm notified. I'm a one-person company, so I need everything automated. Everything needs to be run so that I check in code, tests are run, I get notified if something's broken. Not only that, tests, different tiers of tests are run depending on the types of sort of commit, and also release, pre-release, post-release, different types of checks being run all in an automated way, so I'm not doing anything. And eventually I'll replace myself with the AI model, and then the startup runs by itself, almost in a self-evolving, self-healing way. That's very much possible, and I think it's the future. So right now, one-person startup to build like a Perplexity or Google alternative itself is a big deal, but eventually you'll have no founder, no people startups. Which, come to think about it, is crazy. So yeah, that's today's session. This is sort of the max. I don't go beyond 3. Maybe I've gone on some occasion to 4 sessions, but this is next level. If you go, more than 3, either you're just ignoring what the LLM's outputting, what these coding tools are outputting, and just like go, and just spits out, and then you get the next set of tasks. If you do that, you'll soon realize you'll just end up with a hodgepodge of code. Consistency in architecture is not there. Patterns that you expect in code is sometimes not there. Bugs that sometimes LLM may overlook, files that they may overlook, because the LLMs are always focused on a certain set of code, certain set of files. Yes, you can ask it to search, but because of the context window limitation, it only looks at a certain piece of content, and anything that's outside of that sort of focus area is summarized. So it doesn't have the detail; it's summarized. So it works. You have to work with it, and you can make it work. And I have, but you cannot just have these. You cannot do fire and forget. Just write this code and forget. What people do on YouTube. I mean, those are not founders. They're not building production grade, high quality, predictable code bases. They are just trying to impress by building something with 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, or those folks who are just building quick iPhone apps or web apps, 1-page web apps that do certain things, save something in database. This is a massive effort to build a Perplexity clone. It's not the same as just calling an AI. There are like half a dozen to a dozen just LLM calls to process just one query. In my case, it's crazy. So yeah, that's kind of today's sort of session. I think this is pretty good session. In my case, it turned out to be, I think it was success, because GitHub CI is infrastructure like, it doesn't really edit source code other than just some config files and things like that. So very manageable. And the 2 coding streams I have, one is on the search query processing, more on localization, and the second on I already forgot what was the second session. Second on entity extraction and enrichment. Again, more on the knowledge graph side, which even when I was at Google, I can totally see knowledge graph is an org. It can have parallel development, and then search query processing was another org or team, and they did their own thing, and so you can kind of work in parallel. But I'm the center. I'm a single point of failure, and I'm kind of the central router hub. And so the biggest problem is just your mental capacity and not being overwhelmed, and also resisting the temptation to just trust what Claude or Codex is doing. In this case, these are all Codex sessions. And just like, it did it right, it said it's done. No, so many. In fact, I want to say in my case, 7 out of 10 times, I go back and ask it to improve or refine, or it missed something, or I ask it, are you sure? 7 out of 10 times, maybe even 8. So it's never ever done, and sometimes it over engineers things, sometimes it under engineers things. You have to review the diff, you have to ask it questions why you did it this way, you have to revert code, you have to guide it, you have to have set patterns documented and have it reference those. Only then you can have a consistent code base that you're proud of. So yeah, for me, I love it. It's the best thing in the world. And it's just perfect timing. I quit Google a couple of years back, and I knew these AI coding tools were getting better, but 2 years back, we didn't have the kind of Opus. I'm using Opus 4.6, and this is Claude 5.2, sorry, Codex 5.2 ultra high reasoning setting. We didn't have those. And it was still like I had, it was easy for me to see because I was inside Google also, and just in general, the trajectory, and boy, these coding tools have gotten better. And so for me, it's been incredible. I can't wait to get MVP sort of, or not, I wouldn't even say MVP, like an alpha version out or pre-alpha version out, and put it out there and share it with friends and family. It's incredible. And it's a lot of power to build it like a search platform, because you control how information is organized, distributed, served. So it's a lot of responsibility, and that's why I want a smaller competitor to the big Perplexity and Google. Even Perplexity is like a multi-billion-dollar company. I won't be surprised if Perplexity becomes a trillion-dollar company. I love Perplexity. I'm a pro subscriber, but I think what I'm doing is something that even the Perplexity teams also was this really built by one person? So anyway, that's all for today. Until next time, see ya.